Okay guys, I have something very exciting. A lot of you have been requesting a deeper dive into Swift Playgrounds, and that is exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to take a deep dive into Swift Playgrounds and try and show you some of the things that you can do, why this is really powerful. It's not perfect, it is still Playgrounds, it's not a full IDE, but for what it is, it's very powerful. Let's get started.
All right, here we are in Swift Playgrounds, and again, it's very simple. You're launched into this, we're going to create a new app. Now, again, Swift Playgrounds primarily is designed to be for building apps and small apps, small SwiftUI apps. But we're going to create a game. I don't know what to call it. I'm just going to call it game. Very original. So we'll dive in here. And every time you create an app, you open it up and you're presented with this dummy hello world code. And basically, this is SwiftUI. So what I'm going to do first is create a simple UI for us to build our game in. And that's going to contain a SpriteKit scene so that I can show off a little bit about how SpriteKit works and how you can really have a lot of powerful stuff in a SwiftUI app on Swift Playgrounds. And then we'll go into, once this interface is built, we'll go into building the game itself. So let's start with, in the body, within this view, we're going to create, the first thing we need to do is, actually, before we even do any of this, the first thing we need to do is create our game scene, because it's going to need a game scene. So we'll just create this right now. And this is pretty straightforward. It's, you know, if you're familiar with SpriteKit in general, you'll be pretty familiar with what's going on here. But we'll just get it set up, just dummy, code right now, and we'll fill it in as we go. So I'm just going to create our game scene here, and we need to make sure that we import SpriteKit so that we can access the scene, and that should work. So now let's jump over to our content view. And inside content view, what we're going to do is first we're going to build a scene so that we can put it in our app. And we'll actually even open up the side panel here so you can see it come to life as we build it. So I'm going to build a scene, and we're going to call it, it's going to be an SK scene. And we're going to let our scene equal to game scene, which is what we just set. And then we'll give it a size. We'll do 600, 600, and we'll do scene.scale mode so that it will fit in the scene. We'll do aspect fill, and then we'll return our scene. All right, so now we have our scene, and then what we're going to do is inside, and you know what? I lied. This actually needs to be outside of our view, so we're going to put this up here. This needs to be inside like the content view, but not inside the body of our view. Inside the body of our view, we need to have, we're going to have, hang on, why is it, okay, oh, right. I need to import SpriteKit again for this so that we have access to it. Let's see here, text, we'll do a game title. And we're going to have a SpriteView, which is going to return, basically take the scene that we created above. And we'll do scale to fit. And let's see here. We need to actually return our scene. And so now we have game title and we have our scene. So this is the start, right? This does nothing right now, but it's a start. Before we do anything, I am going to make this large font, large title. So we have a little bit nicer thing there. In the comments below, I think this might end up being a multi-part series. So if you have a title for this game, let me know. Let's dive into, so now that we have this is enough to build the game. So we have our game scene is now alive and well, and I can prove that to you if I come over here, and I did move to view override that you normally have. If we do, let's just create a sprite. Let test sprite equal SK sprite node. We'll give it a color of brown and a size of CG size dot. We'll do 50 by 50, and then add child test sprite. And you can see it pops in the bottom left-hand corner because it's at 0, 0. So if I change the position, right? If I say I do test sprite dot position equals CG point, and then we give it, say we do, remember this is 500 or 600 by 600. So say we do 300 by 300, right in the middle. So it's awesome having this update live in front of us, right? Like this helps us so much. So let's jump into something a little bit more advanced. Maybe the first thing we do is add a little bit of physics to the game, right? Because physics is something that you can do a lot with, and it is a bit complicated. It's not something that I actually am an expert at all. I still get confused by the physics system in SpriteKit all the time. So we're going to learn together on this, but I want to show you how it is possible to have this built into SwiftUI running on an iPad without any problems. And you can have it running live here in the app preview, which is pretty powerful. I think that makes it so that you can really create some pretty powerful games. So what we're going to do is have an SKPhysics delegate up here, which allows us to access the physics components of the games. And in the world, or in the game, once we come to did move to view, the first thing we're going to do is set our physics world to have a contact delegate equal to self. Okay, and now what we're going to do is add a physics body to our sprite here. So we're going to give it an SKPhysics body. We'll just give it one of its size. So we'll say SKPhysics body, and we'll do, and you can see it's already got one. Doesn't really matter. Of rectangle test sprite.size, right? So now it has a physics body. When it spawns, it falls because there's gravity. But we could always say test sprite dot is a physics body dot is affected by gravity equals false, and now it won't fall, but it doesn't do anything because there's nothing there. But we could say maybe touches began. So we have our touch event thing here. So inside this, what if we say let touches.first, let location equal touch dot location in self. Create like a particle to collide with this body here. So let's let particle equal sk sprite node. So we're going to create another particle here, and we're going to go color. It would help if I could type. Which one do I want? I want this one. We'll do green. Sure. And then let's make this like a CG size of maybe 25 by 25. So it's like half the size, half the width, half the height of our test particle here. What we're going to do now is actually we need to give our particle a position of the location. So position equals location, and we'll unwrap that because we know we have it. And we're going to do particle dot physics body rectangle of particle dot size. And then on the touch, we need to add this particle. And what we're going to do is actually give it an impulse so that it moves when we add it. So we're going to do particle dot physics body dot apply impulse. And we'll start with a vector of, keep it simple, we'll just do 2 by 20. We'll see what that does. And then that's it. And then if I tap, it does, so it creates something. And then if it hits that, it does that, right? So now it's moving that around. So now what can we do with this? What can we create out of this? I don't know yet, but let's keep going. Let's see where this leads. So, you could play this as like kind of like a brick game. You could have it be maybe a game where your objective is to land things on top of things. I don't know. There's all kinds of options that you can do once you have physics. Let's actually put like a ground layer in here. So I'll do in our did move to view function, we'll just have let ground equal sk sprite node. And again, I'm just doing this really quickly. There's definitely like more appropriate ways to build the games, but we're going as quick as I can for the sake of YouTube. If you want something more like final, more polished, I'm going to be working on actually building my next official game that I'm going to launch to the App Store. I've already started it in some past videos. I'm going to be going back to that soon, so you'll see more of that in the future. But this again is just an introduction into Swift Playgrounds to show you how powerful it is and how you can use it if you so choose. So I'm going to do, maybe let's do 8,000, wait, it's probably too big, 800 by, let's do 20. And it shouldn't actually need a position because it's going to default to the bottom, but let's give it a ground.physics body affected by gravity equals false. Ground.physics body needs to be created first equals SKPhysics body. We'll again just do a rectangle of ground.size and then add child ground. Oh, interesting. So width is only, oh right, because it's actually pushed over to the left. So if we give it a position, ground.position equals CG point of 300, 0. Yep. And now these should all, yep, oh, right. We need to do ground.physicsBody.isDynamic equals false. All right, now we should be able to load this up and they'll all kind of stay on that. Perfect. So let's see, what can we do here? A full SpriteKit game in this little box. So like you can create things like SKActions, you can do animation, you know, more complex things like spawning enemies and having them come at you. Let's actually do that. Let's create enemies that come in from the right-hand side. So they're going to just they're going to come in from the right-hand side of the screen, and maybe what we'll do is we'll figure something out, but that's a start. So let's do that. All right, so let's work on the spawn enemies function here. So there's a number of ways to do this. I'm going to build a very simple one for the sake of this video, but you know, you can elaborate on this for sure. Let's start with a timer. We're going to create a timer, which is basically just an SKAction for wait for duration. We're going to do 1 second. So we'll have a new enemy every second, and then we'll let spawn enemy equal SKAction dot run, and we're going to capture self here. We're going to say self in, and then we're going to run this code block. You know what? We're going to give the enemies a little bit of a texture. So let's do that. Because I want to show you that you don't have to just use built-in like stuff. So what I'm going to do is actually go in here. We're going to insert from, and we're going to create this default 3x. And then if I come back here, we'll give our enemy a texture. So we're going to say let enemy texture equal xk texture of image named, and then we're going to have a default 3x, right? And you know, then what we need to do, because we need to have access with this outside of the spawn enemies function, we need to make sure that our enemy is actually declared up here. So we're going to have our enemy equal sk sprite node, and then what we're going to do is come down to our spawn enemies function, and we'll basically just assign some parameters here. So we'll have the enemy equal a sprite node with a texture and a size. And we'll do enemy texture for the texture and CG size of, let's do 75. Again, this is all, you know, we're just playing around, seeing what looks good. It's not going to look great because I'm just doing this, you know, in a matter of a few minutes for you. But again, it's to show you the concepts. You're going to create your own games when it comes down to it, and you're going to use Swift Playgrounds to do it, which I think is fantastic. So let's keep going here. We're going to give it a position. And this is where it's going to start. So we want it to start off screen and move across the screen. So we're going to say position equals CG point, and we'll call it, so it's 600, let's call it 625. Well, let's do 675. That should be far enough outside. And then let's call it 10 to start. It may end up needing to be fixed a little bit. We'll see where that lands. And then what we're going to do is have our enemy move from left to right. And to do that, we need to create another SKAction, but we'll create this first. Add child enemy. And then I think what we would want to do is come down here and say let sequence equal SKAction dot sequence, and we have a sequence of actions. We're going to do timer and spawn enemy, and then self dot run SKAction dot repeat forever sequence. If I change this to like 370, 350 or whatever, we should see them start popping up supposedly. If I did all this right, let's see. You know why it's not running? It's not running because I never called it. I need to come into my thing here and say spawn enemies. So now you can see they're all here, and they're just going to keep spawning over and over again. We do want to raise that up, so let's get that the right size. Let's do 30 is probably fine. And then what we're going to do is, I guess what we want to do is when an enemy is added to the scene, we want to give the enemy its own SKAction to move to a location. So we'll say enemy.run SKAction. Let move enemy equal SKAction, move to point, and we'll move to CG point 0 x 0 30. And we'll do that over, let's say, 5 seconds to start. And then we're going to do enemy.run move enemy. You can see our enemies moving. So now what we want to do is have them spawn off screen. So we'll do 655. And now you can see not only do they move a little faster. Now they don't have any physics bodies attached to them, so they don't do anything when they collide with our green squares, but we can fix that by giving the enemies a physics body. So we can say enemy.physicsBody equals SKPhysics body. And we'll, again, this one's probably better to be like a circle. Well, circle's a little bit tricky. Let's do instead. Let's actually do a physics body of texture. So we can use that enemy texture, and we'll do enemy dot size. All right, so we have our physics body. So now if I do this, you can see they are here and they're moving it down to the end. So let's see where can we go from here? This again is just showing you things that we can do with Swift Playgrounds. All right, so now let's dive a little bit deeper and let's try and show you how to display a count of something, like transition from SpriteKit, get some value in your SpriteKit game and display that value in SwiftUI, so in the content view. In order to do that, what I'm going to do is something very simple, and I'm just going to basically count how many of these blocks are pushed over to the side. So when a block gets pushed over, we're going to increase the count, and it's just be very simple. It'll go up from there. As I develop this, if I develop this more next week or in the coming weeks, maybe we'll see a little bit more about this. We can build this a little bit more into a game, but just from a concept point of view, I want to show you how to take a value, calculate that value within your SpriteKit game, and then display that value. Say you're trying to display a score, for example, in your UI, you can display that, you can take that value and transition it to SwiftUI and then use it within the buttons or the text or whatever in ContentView. So I'm going to pause this for now. And what we're going to do is essentially create a value to both calculate within SpriteKit, within the SpriteKit game scene, and then transition that value over to the content view. So let's start by just creating a value to count. So we're going to count particles moved left. And this is just going to be, we'll set it to 0 to start. And then every time a particle is killed, so we'll come over here and we'll say, basically we're going to say if node.b or node.b.name equals p for particle, because if you see, I might have done this off camera, but I gave all of these a name. So the particle is named p. So if node.b.name equals p, then what we're going to do is say particle moved left plus equals 1. And we'll do this down here, because the thing is we don't know, maybe p is actually node A, because we don't know which one is hitting, right? This just basically says there's two nodes that have done contact. One of them is node A, one of them is node B. We don't know which one's which. We just know two pieces have come together. So node B could be the particle or node A could be the particle. And we find that out doing this, and then we remove the particle, and when we do that, we also are going to increase our particles moved variable. So what I'll do now is I'll just have the update function, and I'll just print particles moved left, just so that we can see if it's working. So as we go forward, the enemies are moving to the left and they're dying, and nothing's happening. But theoretically, once we do this, we should see, if I open up the console, 3. And we can get it to go up even more by having them all move over. So what we're going to do now is, again, we're going to pause this. And now what we need to do is get this 7, or this value. We need to get this over into our content view. Because what we're going to want to do is, maybe what we'll do is we'll, under the sprite view, we'll have another text. And we'll have this text be, say, count of particles. And we'll have it be like particle or whatever, right? So that's all fine and good, but we need to get that value into content view. And to do that, we're going to have to use some SwiftUI inside of GameScene. So let's make sure, so SwiftUI still is being imported here. And what we're going to need to do is change our particles moved left to a binding. Now, when we do this, we actually have to change it entirely. It's going to be a binding, and it's going to be a variable particles moved left, and this is going to be an integer. But then what we're going to have to do is actually initiate it within ContentView. So when it's called, we're going to have to initiate it. So we're going to have to go and have it be particles moved left, and it's going to be a binding int. And then what we're going to do inside this initiation, we're going to have, we're going to basically set particles moved left equal to the same thing, basically call the super.init scale mode equals .fill. I think that's all we need to do. If I'm missing something, we'll figure it out when we run it. Let's see. Oh, we need the this, right? All right. We have an error, which makes sense because we so inside of this, we're going to need to have particles moved left, and we need to set that binding. So we're going to say that it equals, basically, we need to create one more thing. All right, first, we need to create a class. Let's call it gameplay values or something. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Just what we're going to be passing through. It's going to be an observable object. It's very common. Sometimes you'll accidentally hit observed object. That's not what you want. You want an observable object. Trust me, I've made that error so many times that it is something you want to make sure you remember to check. So then we're going to create a variable, a published variable called particles moved left, and we're going to initiate that at 0. And now what we're going to do is come down here, and we're going to have an environment object var. We'll just call this values, and we'll set it to gameplay values. And then here we'll have values dot particle moved left. I forgot that. All right, and then let's see. Let's just do values dot particles moved left. All right. Now what we should be able to do is come down here and say this is that self dot values dot particles moved left. All right. I think we're good. Let's see. Restart preview. No. View is missing an environment object of type gameplay values. Ensure views relying on environment objects have objects inserted. Oh. This always throws you for a loop. This needs to have like a dummy value, right? Yeah. I need to have dot environment object games. What is it? It's gameplay values. And this will fix my error. That's always another one. If sometimes you need to change your preview so that it will work. So I'm like, why am I not getting errors? But I am not able to see things. So now we should. All right, this is where I need to have my initiation. And so in my init, I need to have a size. Size. We'll just do 600. 600 doesn't really matter. All right, and now we have our count of particles, and then as they move over, they are added to the count. So it's pretty simple. I know this is again, I know this is still very surface level. It's not 100%, like, we're not building a final product here. If you're interested in seeing a more in-depth look of game development in general, I'm going to be going back to my game replicator in the coming weeks, so stay tuned for that. I'm also going to continue working with SwiftUI on my iPad because I find it very interesting and fun, and I want to continue this as well. So get subscribed and come along for the ride. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.